Anne Bradstreet authored the first book of poetry published in the British colonies of North America. She was the wife of a leading Puritan official, Simon Bradstreet, and arrived in Massachusetts in 1630 aboard the first ship carrying Puritans to the New World. Though she began writing early in life, her poems were not published until 1650, when the 10th Muse, lately sprung up in America, appeared in print. Her subjects reflected the difficult lives of early English settlers and the distinct challenges faced by women in 17th century America. She wrote about common problems for the Puritans, like sickness and house fires, and she also explored more metaphysical questions tied to her own religious beliefs. The Bradstreets had 8 children, and many of Anne's later poems addressed the travails of raising a family amid the unforgiving conditions of the New World. Influenced by such English poets as Philip Sidney and Edmund Spenser, Bradstreet showed mastery of formal technique and wide-ranging erudition, touching on subjects from medicine to arcane Puritan theology. Yet for all the learning in her verse, many of her poems are strikingly tender. One of her most well-known works, To My Dear and Loving Husband, a poem not published until after her death, reads like a poignant love letter to Simon Bradstreet. If ever two were one, then surely we. If ever man were loved by wife, then thee. If ever wife was happy in a man, compare with me, ye women, if you can. I prize thy love more than whole mines of gold, or all the riches that the East doth hold. My love is such that rivers cannot quench, nor aught but love from thee give recompense. Those lines cut through time, revealing a marriage of deep affection in a world often defined by restraint. Published women poets were a rarity in the 17th century, and Bradstreet's poems occasionally hint at the hostility some fellow Puritans felt toward her literary work. In one poem she confides, I am obnoxious to each carping tongue, who says my hand a needle better fits, a razor-sharp reminder of the narrow expectations placed upon women. About halfway into her life story, we see the tension. A mother of 8, a devout Puritan, a formally trained poet, and a colonial settler grappling with sickness, fire, faith, and love. Tell us in the comments, does Bradstreet's voice challenge your assumptions about women's roles and courage in early colonial America? And which line from her love poem resonates most with you, and why? Beyond her poems, Bradstreet's life intertwined with the colony's leadership. Her father, Thomas Dudley, immigrated to Massachusetts and became a leading political opponent of John Winthrop. The two men alternated in the governorship for much of the first 2 decades of the colony's existence. Bradstreet's husband later became governor of Massachusetts after her death, underscoring how closely her household stood to the center of colonial power. Her legacy continued across generations, with descendants including the poet Oliver Wendell Holmes, a sign of how deeply her family became woven into the fabric of American literary and civic life. Many of Bradstreet's most well-known poems were published posthumously, and today she is considered America's first English-language poet, a title that captures both her pioneering status and the enduring strength of her work. If you enjoy discovering the hidden human stories behind major turning points in American history, make sure to subscribe for more thoughtful explorations of the people who shaped the past. Anne Bradstreet's journey from an Atlantic crossing in 1630 to a printed book in 1650, from household trials to intellectual triumphs, from private tenderness to public recognition, reminds us that the earliest American literature was forged in hardship and sustained by faith and love. What does it mean that America's first poet was a Puritan woman who wrote about both fires and fierce love? And how does that complexity change how we see the origins of American poetry?